When we talk about the history of AI, it's easy to imagine this straight, clean line of progress. Bigger computers, smarter algorithms, more and more data. It feels inevitable, right? Like this was the only way it could have ever happened. But what if it wasn't? What if the AI we use every single day isn't the only one we could have had? What if its entire DNA was shaped by things like money, convenience, and, yeah, even politics? Okay, let's get into it.
This right here, this is the whole idea we're going to unpack. It's a pretty radical thought, isn't it? That the kind of AI we have wasn't about finding the one true mathematical path. Nope. It was more like survival of the fittest, where certain ideas got picked and funded, while others were just left to wither on the vine. So the real question becomes, who was doing the picking and why?
But before we even dive into AI, we have to get this one thing straight. Science isn't this pure, neutral thing. It's a human process. Institutions, governments, universities, giant corporations, they decide what's worth studying. They decide which methods are legit. And most importantly, they decide who gets the money. This whole process filters out a ton of ideas and basically freezes the chosen ones in place as the standard. And that is the world AI was born into.
So let's go back. Mid-20th century. AI is just getting started, and it arrives at this massive fork in the road. And there were two totally different visions for what this new technology could and should become.
And you can see the two philosophies laid out so clearly here. On one side, you had what's called symbolic AI. This was all about trying to teach a machine to think like us, using logic, grammar, rules, and really trying to understand meaning. It was complicated, messy, and you often needed a human expert to guide it. Then, on the other side, you had statistical AI. This approach didn't really care about meaning. It was all about probability, finding patterns in huge piles of data, and just optimizing for a specific outcome at massive scale. So there you have it, two completely different paths, one chasing something like human reasoning, the other chasing scalable pattern matching. So the billion-dollar question is, which one won out? And more importantly, why?
And the answer, as it so often does, really came down to money and power. We're in the middle of the Cold War. The military and big industry, they had very specific needs. They wanted tech you could grade with a number. They wanted something that would just get better if you threw a bigger computer at it. And, crucially, they had zero interest in getting stuck in philosophical debates about consciousness. Statistical AI, it checked every single box, perfectly.
And this is the result. At the end of the day, the statistical path didn't win because it was some truer representation of intelligence. It won because it fit the political and institutional needs of the time. It was fundable. And that one choice, right there, set the course for the next 60 years. All right, so that first choice was made, but it didn't stop there. It actually created this kind of gravitational pull. A whole series of other choices followed that path, usually prioritizing what was easy and efficient for institutions over what might have led to a deeper, more genuine understanding in our machines. Just look at the battle between causality and correlation. Causal models try to get at the why. They want to understand the actual cause and effect in the world. But to do that, you have to state your assumptions out loud, and that makes you accountable. Correlation models, they don't need any of that. They just need an insane amount of data. They look objective, which lets institutions off the hook for the biases baked right in. So, which one do you think they preferred? And the fallout from that choice is just massive. Because we prioritized correlation, we basically taught our AI systems to be incredible fortune tellers, but we never taught them to understand anything. It can tell you with 99% accuracy that it's going to rain, but it has no clue why it rains. This preference for what's convenient even trickled down to the kind of math that got taught and funded. A purely engineering culture took over. The tools that worked and scaled, things like linear algebra and optimization, they got all the attention. The deeper, messier questions, the philosophy of what probability even means, the very foundations of logic, all that stuff got branded as too academic and slowly pushed to the side. And this way of thinking didn't stop with math. Oh no, it went looking for a theory of intelligence itself, and it found and adopted the one from psychology that just so happened to be the most politically convenient. That framework was behaviorism. The idea is super simple. Forget about what's going on inside the black box. Ignore messy things like thoughts or intentions. Just focus on the input and the output. If it gives the right answer, you're golden.
And this was an absolutely perfect fit for industrial goals. It's easy to measure, you can create performance metrics, KPIs, and you get to sidestep all those difficult subjective questions about what the AI is actually thinking.
So you can see how all these choices start to pile up, right? They all favor scale, convenience, and things you can easily measure. And in this next part, we're going to see how these preferences didn't just point the way, they basically paved the road in concrete, making it almost impossible to turn back.
It all starts with the data itself. The gigantic data sets that AI learns from, they are not a neutral snapshot of our world, not even close. They are overwhelmingly collected and labeled by people in the global north, mostly in English, reflecting a very specific slice of human experience. This fundamentally shapes the AI's entire worldview from the ground up.
And this is so important to understand. When we talk about AI bias, it's not some random glitch in the code. It's the totally predictable result of who controls the infrastructure, who collects the data, who labels it, who builds the systems. The bias isn't a bug. It's a feature of how the whole thing was built.
So with this system in place, how do you define success? Well, it became all about performance on standardized tests or benchmarks. The entire field, billions of dollars, all got pointed at one goal: climbing the leaderboards. We started rewarding tiny little gains in accuracy instead of things like, common sense or the ability to explain yourself. And this kicks off a powerful feedback loop that locks everything in. The skewed data shapes the worldview. The narrow benchmarks define what good even means. And pretty soon, the cost of the raw computing power needed to compete gets so high that only a handful of giant companies can even play the game. They build an economic moat. And those other ideas, like symbolic AI, they become totally infeasible. The path is set. And that brings us right up to today, because now the consequences of this locked-in path are becoming impossible to ignore. It's forcing a kind of reckoning, making us look back at this hidden history and maybe rediscover some of those paths we decided not to take. Just think about the biggest complaints we all have about AI right now. It can write a perfect sentence, but doesn't have a clue what it means. It just amplifies the biases already in our society. It completely fails when something unexpected happens. And it can almost never explain why it made a decision. See, these aren't just random bugs. They are the direct, predictable outcome of all those choices made decades ago. They're political artifacts, not just technical glitches.
Okay, so after hearing all that, it can feel a little hopeless, right? I mean, if the system is so deeply locked in, can we actually change it? Is there any way to build a different kind of AI?
Well, here's the fascinating twist. The very ideas that got pushed to the margins all those years ago, they're making a huge comeback. Causal AI, systems that try to mix stats with symbolic rules, new methods for actually trying to interpret what's going on inside the model, they're all resurfacing. And it's not because of some sudden philosophical shift. It's because the old way is hitting a wall. That purely statistical, behaviorist approach, it's just not good enough for the complex, high-stakes problems we want to solve now. The real world is messy. It demands more than just pattern matching. Reality itself is forcing us to confront the convenient choices we made in the past. And that brings us to the final and most critical takeaway from all of this. If we truly want a different future for AI, one that's more understandable, more robust, more aligned with our values, the answer isn't just a slightly better model. The change has to go way deeper. It starts by changing the institutional incentives. It starts by asking what kind of science, what kind of knowledge we as a society are going to decide is valuable. That is the question this secret history leaves us with. Thanks for watching.